Okay, so one of the things you offer at Elpizo is what we call premarital counseling, which could be like a, at least for me years ago, I thought it's a weird thing because like everyone goes to marriage, they love each other and all that, everything will work out. So why would anyone go to counseling? Aren't we supposed to go to counseling when things are not well? So just can you tell us more about how did that start at Elpizo? Why did you start it, and what kind of things you do with the premarital counseling?
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things you said, which I want to address, was you said, don't we go to counseling when we have problems? Well, yes, but we also say it's good to go to counseling when you don't have problems, right? So it's like when you go and check your car every year. I'm sure you don't wait a whole year to check your car. Like every so often, you change your lights, change your engine oil. I don't know about cars. Engine oil, transmission.
Yes.
So these things, and then of course you'll go to your GP to go and have a yearly medical. So for counseling is the same. For general counseling is the same. We believe, Elvis and I believe, that you go for counseling. The best time to go for counseling is when you don't have a problem. You know, so you're going for a checkup. So that's one thing. For premarital counseling, it's very important. Like oftentimes Elvis and I talk about the fact that we got married and we didn't have premarital counseling. And for us, we believe that our saving grace has been the fact that we studied together, right, Elvis? The fact that we went to do the counseling together and we were learning on the job, you know. And over the years, we've gotten to realize that the importance of premarital counseling, that sets you up for, you know, being ready for marriage. Premarital counseling doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be no problems, but it just brings your awareness to some of the challenges that may come during marriage. It also prepares you to, you know, when you're having fun, when you're dating and you're in love and you look your best when you go out and everything is wonderful and rosy and kissy, but when you get into the marriage, that's when the real, you know, challenges happen. You're no longer, you know, the makeup is off. You wake up and the wig is off, the makeup is off or whatever, and the real me is there. But then we haven't talked about issues, important issues. We haven't talked about how are we going to handle parenting, for example. How are we going to handle roles and responsibilities, you know. What's our family goal? What's our marriage plan? That's one thing that we often talk about. We'll probably talk about it a bit along the line. But premarital counseling really sets you up, prepares you for the journey ahead. You know, it's, you go to school to learn things. So it's really important that you go to premarital to learn about marriage. You know. And,
you know, we often say that for premarital is you save your marriage before you go in. You go to school, and if you want a particular career path, you have to go years of training and sometimes do loads of clinical hours. Well, in marriage, how many people are very intentional going for premarital or even enrolling in some type of you know, educational process or going for school? We don't, and we equate marriage to all the other institutions because we said that it's the greatest institution. But interestingly enough, marriage is the only institution that you get your certificate before you go in.
That's true.
You know, when you are studying, you get your certificate at the end of it. And this is the institution that when you go, you don't graduate. It is a journey. And also is the institution that you never go for midterms or Christmas holidays or holidays. You are always in school learning. And more importantly, in your educational journey, you will be given heads up when you have to write exams or you do quiz. In marriage institution, you are not given the time, date, and when trials and tests and examination will come. It comes, and sometimes you are basically stuck. So for pre-marital, you come in and you become aware. You have the opportunity to talk about so many things that would be so helpful. So that's why we are, we've been campaigning and also encouraging those that are thinking of getting into the great institution to consider pre-marital counseling.
Also, from my experiences, the when you get married, you enter unknown territories. When you get your first kid, when you start to get higher salaries, for example. Suddenly you have all this money. Where do you spend it? Well, your priorities change. If something disastrous happened in your family, death in the family or something like that, this is unknown territory that you might not have thought about before going into marriage. So I think most of breakups in marriages and relationships happen because the people don't know each other well to go into an unknown territory. And also from just my experience, coming from Iraq, in these places, the culture is very influential. You have a set of roles, expectations. You already know what's expected, because you have some certain layer of culture you have to fulfill, and so the number of kids maybe, or the roles in marriage, these are already set up. You don't really have to choose them. So in this day and age, there are differences in the culturally differences. So you have to talk about all these things, the roles, how many kids you will have, also personality, do you prefer this or that, and I think it's very important.
You see, our pre-marital at Elpizo Counseling, it is comprehensive. And sometimes those that come through us, they say, "What, really?" And we say yes, because if we are not intentional dealing with it or talking about it, where else are you going to be talking about it? So you did mention about you wake up one morning, you say, "Oh, maybe I hardly know you," because we often said that when people come together, it's not two people getting married, it's six people getting married. Then we often ask them, who are the other four? They say parents, and what if you don't have parents? So we say, for an example, Elvis is getting married to Ruth that he thinks he knows. That is one person. Elvis is getting married to Ruth that Ruth thinks she is. That is two. Elvis getting married to Ruth that Ruth really is. And that the other side of the coin, the reverse, whereby Ruth is also doing that to me, six. But when people come together, they come with the notion that I think I know who he is or who she is. And once they come together, the other four, they are hovering. And when they start getting in, that is when you hear people say, "When I met you at first, you were so nice, but now I hardly know you." It's because the other four were not identified. In pre-marital, that is where we do the personality traits, and we even look at marriage expectations, because sometimes when you are expecting something to happen and it does not materialize, it sets in frustrations. And you brought something about culture. When people get married, they don't only marry you, but they marry history. It's history. So the question is, do you know the historical background of the person that you are, about to commit your life to? have you had the opportunity to review, to look at the history, to talk together? You know, so we have a whole range that we go through. I'm sure you have some to add to.
Oh, yeah. I want to mention about the history, though, because I think that's really important. Sometimes couples say, oh, you know, we don't want to talk about our history. It's in the past. It's not necessary. But it is necessary because it really does affect the relationship. You know, for example, if my history in terms of what I know about marriage is maybe what I've seen from my family, and maybe the history in my family hasn't been a good one, then that's all I know, and that's what I'm taking into the marriage. If my history has been that maybe there was trauma in my past, maybe there's been abuse, maybe there's been, you know, domestic violence or sexual abuse, guess what? It comes up in the relationship. And sometimes, you know, when it does come up, then the other person is like, well, you deceived me because I didn't know. Had I known, I probably would have made a different decision, or at least I would be aware of what I'm getting into, because now we're living together, and you know, these the impact of what happened to you, or the impact of your history, is materializing or is showing up in our current marriage. So we get to talk about those type of things. You know, like Elvis had already mentioned, we get to talk about various aspects in you know, that comes up in relationships, so that you're much aware. And one of the tools that we use to do that is it's like a relationship assessment tool called Prepare Enrich. And a lot of ministers or a lot of people that work with couples relationships tend to use this assessment tool. And it's really great because you get to fill it out independently, and then it assesses where you are, you know, on the relationship, and it'll grade you like 100%, 80%, 70%. Sometimes, because you're so in love, you might feel that everything is wonderful and great, and so your score will come out to be like, you know, 80s, 90s, 100s. But that's where we focus on, because we want to know for sure, is it really 100%? Is it really 90%? Have you had that conversation that you need to have? Or are you just brushing things aside and say, yeah, great, we're good communicators. Yes, we're good at resolving conflict. Yes, because we go to the same church, we're on the same spiritual level. And oftentimes when we break it down and ask the questions, and they realize, oh my goodness, you know, we're just making assumptions.
And it's not like lack of knowledge on their terms. It's just like it's an unknown territory. Like there's no way they can see what's coming.
Right.
That's right.
Unless you talk about it. But how often do couples seriously, like maybe some do. I don't want to say all couples don't. Some do and some don't. But I would say a lot more people do not discuss these pertinent issues that could come up, such as, you know, children, you know, finances. How are we going to spend our money? And again, that also has to do with financial history. What is your financial history? What is your financial knowledge? What are you coming with? What is your relationship with finance independently? You know, some of us grow up with money, some grow up with no money, and so how we deal with money, you know, there's a history to that. But if I don't talk about it, then we get married and I spend all the money I have, or put all the money I have in the bank because I don't want to spend it. I want to make sure there's money for a rainy day. And then my spouse is, you know, thinks everything is okay, I'm going to spend money. That's going to be a problem. Or
sometimes like they both like investments, but one likes to invest in things like stocks, other likes to invest in like real things like a house, or to rent.
You see, and this is why in pre-marital counseling you have a safe space to come and, you know, share and explore, express, and also reason to create understanding. Because we often say that when we talk about intimacy, sometimes people will say, oh, maybe emotional intimacy or sexual or
intimacy,
physical, but we have a lot of them, you know. So financial is one area of intimacy. We have financial intimacy, and with financial intimacy, that has really been an area that has really destroyed a lot of marriages. Sometimes people would do things and say that my paycheck is my paycheck, your paycheck is yours. So for the household bills, 50-50. The moment you start your marriage on 50-50, that is the 50-50 bit that you are already divided in there. What if you have kids? Someone comes to you, oh, go to your mom, go to your dad, because my 50, I've already put
used up my 50.
budget. I'm building a house at home, or I'm doing this investment. You are not together.
Or what if you get sick, you have to leave work for 2 months?
Yes, you know, and even in pre-marital, when we you know, work around or we have conversation, you know, in the financial intimacy, sometimes people are so shocked that people that have, you know, passed away, like a spouse that have passed away, the other one don't even know the bank account PIN number, the online banking. They have got absolutely no idea. Why? Is because they have never shared, and the financial intimacy have not been strong. So with the financial intimacy too, we also encourage couples that before you say I do, get each other to do their credit checks. Do the credit history, because sometimes people get a bombshell when they get married. They excited, let's go buy a house, and they go to the bank and they say, oh, we are sorry, your spouse cannot get credit because blah blah blah, and all these monies or this, you know, history about financial crisis, and the other spouse is devastated because they start having what we call the unbroken dreams. You know, the broken dreams, because in their mind they have, you know, conceptualized that, okay, this is how we want it, and we'll buy a house, raise the family, only to wake up to know that they're not able to achieve that. So financial intimacy is a very big area,
and it's one of the, you know, areas for concerns for divorce. And you mentioned culture as well, that, you know, there's such a multicultural world now. We're not only marrying from our own cultures or countries of origin, we're spreading out. And so sometimes we have to look after families, you know, depending on how I see family or how I see relationships. Because some people will get married and it's just my husband and I. But then for some cultures, it's not just that. When you marry, you're marrying the whole family, the extended family. And so you're not only looking after your spouse and your children, you're looking after perhaps your elderly parents or cousins or uncles and aunts back home, wherever back home may be. And oftentimes, you know, we find that, you know, couples tend to be sneaking money off to relatives and the other spouse doesn't know about. And then they do find out. And then that becomes, you know, a bone of contention, and that brings problems. So it's not just finance that we talk about everything. So things like communication, communication styles. How do we communicate effectively? How do I communicate so my spouse understands, hears and understands?
And it's, I think some people have the idea that communication is just like don't shout, but it's way deeper than this. It's about learning how to communicate just like our parents, and then learning to communicate how the other person wants to communicate. It's much more deeper than
it
just
is. It is.
And when you take communication, for an example, you can only give what you have. You cannot give, or you cannot, you know, show what you don't have. If you speak Spanish, you can only speak Spanish. And if you are Italian, and you don't know how to speak English and you want to express yourself, you can only speak Italian. So when it comes to communication, someone that have gone through, upbringing of saying please, thank you, or maybe using their ears to listen effectively and paraphrase, they can only demonstrate that. But someone that have not had that opportunity to express or even be assertive and not brush things under the carpet, you see how sometimes people will internalize and not be able to express when it comes to communicating, because nobody is a mind reader. We cannot read what is in each other's mind. Unless you express, the other person will not know. So if people come from maybe home, or maybe they've been brought up that they have witnessed that the mom giving silent treatment. You've done something, I'm not happy about it, I will protest in silence and I will not talk to you. That is silent treatment, and that is a form of emotional abuse, because you are punishing the person by saying absolutely nothing to show the person that whatever that you did, I am not in approval, I really don't appreciate. But the point is, the person cannot read your mind. And these are some of the communication, behaviors that people will, bring into the marriage, and sometimes it causes a lot of issues. And even for, how many kids people want to have. Sometimes people don't even have that conversation, or
they don't even have the conversation that, are we going to be on contraceptives, for how long, for when, or sometimes they don't even have the conversation, have you had have you sterilized or something? Because some people get married and they haven't had that discussion. They take it for granted when we get married, we will have children. And then they get married, and later on they realize that, one of the spouse has had, has been sterilized, and so they can't have children. Or perhaps there's, fertility issues. And, these are very big challenges that can cost a lot of money, can cause a lot of emotional stress. And in some cultures, the families will kind of encourage you to leave if no children are coming into the family. So it's a lot of, there are a lot of areas that we discuss at Elpizo.
And sometimes just make plan B, like let's say fertility
it's
not gonna happen, there's a problem.
Then what?
What's your plan? Because some people like enter marriage thinking that they're gonna have 5 kids, it's gonna be nice playing in the garden and all that, but then if that reality did not happen, then what is marriage for you?
Exactly. These are what we call, expectations. What are the expectations for you going into marriage? Have you discussed your expectations with each other? Have you discussed your non-negotiables, your no tolerance? If such and such happens, that's it for me. Or if such and such happens, how are we going to deal with it? These are some conversations that it's very important for premarital couples to have.
You see, and even with the notion of having children, it is easier said than done. Telling someone, you cannot have kids, so go and adopt. It's easier said than done. Some people want to have their own kids, but for adoption to come in, they need to have a discussion to create understanding that what does that mean. We know you can adopt and have kids in your home. That's why we encourage them at Elpizo that knowledge is there. We have, medicine that have really advanced, research, lots of it, there. You use it. So say, for example, men, we encourage them, go and do your sperm count. Because sometimes, really and truly, in some cultures, if babies are not coming, they tend to blame the woman. That is her fault that you cannot have kids. maybe it's the man's fault too. But sometimes they don't look at it in the direction of the man. Maybe the sperm count is low, and maybe they have to do something else. And sometimes too, some of the women too are not able to have kids. But when you do the medical exams and you go for tests, all of this will show. And in the event of our professional boundaries, when you get those medical tests, we will say connect with your family physician and go through it, even doing your blood works, check for STDs. Sometimes people will use love zone. I love this person, and they get married. Guess what? They sign their death warrant because the other person have got HIV or AIDS. And we cannot.
Or even things like sickle cell, especially for Afro-Caribbeans, we have
traits,
sickle cell traits. And so if I have sickle cell trait and my husband has sickle cell trait, the likelihood for our children to have sickle cell, full-blown sickle cell, is high. And we have not thought about that. And we haven't, and we're not saying they don't get married just because, but at least be aware and be prepared that, okay, if such and such happens.
I think so. So basically, just to summarize, what premarital counseling does is to draw a map for your marriage, to decrease the unknown, so that when something happens, you're not shocked. You already have a partner to journey with through that, and it doesn't become an obstacle in your marriage.
Absolutely. I think you've summed it up very well. And I like the usage of map. Because we often say, towards the end of the sessions, the premarital sessions, we often get couples to do their marriage map. What is our marriage map? What is our marriage plan? What are our short-term goals and long-term goals? What is our marriage vision? What do we want our marriage to look like, to feel like, to be like? What are things that we're going to put in place? And what are the obstacles? And how are we going to overcome those obstacles? So, we have, at Elpizo, we have our couples do their marriage plan or marriage map, started off. And the thing is, it's not fixed in stone because things change.
Of course.
But at least you're aware, like you said, it's not a surprise. It's not a shock.
To change.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that's a really great summary in that,
one of the big areas that we also touch up on is family and friends. More importantly, in-laws issues is an area that often comes up with in-laws, saga. But
I think it's about the real issues. And it's about learning how to set good boundaries, healthy boundaries.
And the opportunity for them to talk about it is so amazing, because then they know how to support each other, to put their boundaries there, and also to look at it the way forward. So, like you summed it up, is a place that people will come and explore, talk about things, knowing I'm getting married, you owe 500,000, 1 million, I get married to you. It's not only your debt, but my debt too. You are rich, I get married, it's not only you, I'm also rich too. So that when people create those understanding, they know how to move forward, looking at a whole range of the other intimacy, recreational intimacy, intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, financial, emotional intimacy, and knowing that when one area is affected, it affects the rest of the intimacy. So you look at a car, you take the battery off, the car will not start. You put the battery in, take the wheel off, it will not move. So they are all connected. So integrated. So when you come systems. For premarital, it's a whole system that people will take their time and explore together, because when one area is broken and even you are Christian, you don't feel like praying with that person. Why? Because financial intimacy is broken, or sexual intimacy is broken. I don't even connect, and how can we even pray together? But to be very much intentional and aware that as you go through it, you work together, and it's all about being honest. Because if you are not honest, even with the inventory, it doesn't come out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.